Okay, so I am here with Stephen and Janus Bennun. Is that right? Did I get that names right?
Jana
Yes.
is actually how we pronounce her name. It's European, so they pronounce it with a ya rather than a ja. But
Okay, good.
other than that, you did great.
Yes.
Okay, well, I would like you to introduce yourselves because I saw your work on Substack, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a very neglected subject and a very underrated subject of the Noahide laws and this possible, uh, persecution coming from an angle that almost no one is looking. And, um, as far as I can tell, you guys are really digging into research that even people who study conspiracy theories all the time, they almost never even look at. So, how would you guys describe yourselves, and how long have you been looking into this versus actually writing about it and publishing it? When did you turn around and feel like you had to start talking about it publicly and actually raising awareness about it? I'm interested in that kind of story.
Mhm. Well, it's nice to be here, Terry.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for having us. And uh, we have a ministry called Bennun Institute of Biblical Research. And we have Israeli News Live because we used to be Zionist ministry, fully Zionist. We
Okay.
used to live in Israel, not for a long time when we were married. Steve lived there before he met me. But then we were striving to make an aliyah, if you know what that means, to move to Israel, get citizenship there and live there.
Oh, okay.
Because we truly believed with all of our hearts, even though we believed in Jesus, we still believe that Israel has a major place in future kingdom of God and prophecy. And we believed in the dispensational doctrines where we kind of believed that Israel will be saved as a nation, that there is some sort of a national saving, and Jesus will return to them. They're going to recognize him. And we wanted to have part in this. And basically, we went there to preach to Jews, Jesus.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But when we came there, we found out that's just not an easy endeavor at all, because we were directly told not to even speak the name of Jesus or not to even try. So we started to see things while we lived there that didn't line up with what we believed Israel is about.
Right.
And we started to question things. And I have a difficult time pointing what exactly did it. It was a lot of little things that happened, little seeds that were kind of given us already, and then we started to compare it, see it for ourselves. But actually there was one major thing, and it was a time when Steve was reporting on geopolitical news from Israel. We lived there, and he was reporting on news from Israel. And it was at the time when President Bashar al-Assad in Syria was kind of persecuted or something.
Pick it up.
Yeah, pick it up from there, because this was kind of like a point.
It was a major turning point.
Right.
We'd just had, not long before that event, there was a friend of ours that was in the IDF. He was an officer in the IDF, lived in the same neighborhood we did. And at this time, we hadn't moved to Jerusalem yet. We lived on the northern side of the Galilee for a short period of time. And he had invited over us to his home there to have dinner with him and his family. And he was beginning to tell us about, seeing ISIS militants, according to the intelligence reports, that were wearing tzitzit. And it's the four corners on the Jewish garment that people are so used to seeing. It looks like strings hanging down. And I'm like, what? And Yana was like, what? They're wearing tzitzit? ISIS? This is kind of crazy. Well, I kind of let it go. Didn't think a lot about it, but it sticks in the back of your mind. But then what happened, we would go up to the border right there. There's a lookout spot over Syria there that you can see, and you can see the war going on. We would catch it as they're bombing and killing each other there. Really terrible. But what really caught our attention was Aaron Erdem. Aaron Erdem was a parliament member in Turkey, And I was watching one day, and he was talking about how that they had captured the ISIS militants, bringing the sarin gas through Turkey, and they had arrested them, confiscated everything, only to have, at that time, Erdogan was the prime minister. He had uh, demanded their release and be allowed to go into Syria. Well, the long rabbit trail was that the Clintons, through the over in Yemen, when they were collapsing that country there, they had smuggled the sarin gas from there. The CIA did give it to Erdogan. Erdogan gives it to the ISIS. They brought it in. And of course, Aaron then explains that this was used against those children, but it really wasn't Bashar al-Assad after all. Mm-hmm. That led me to Vanessa Beeley. I became friends with Vanessa and started learning more and more about what was going on. And now I'm starting to think, oh my gosh, and Israel's hand was in all of this as well.
It's a false flag, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. It just like, USS Liberty, 9/11, and everything else that comes around. Mm-hmm. They're not afraid to kill their own people. And I think October the 7th is no different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely was an interesting one that I, for probably, I also grew up in a very Zionist town, and this whole area that I live in Manitoba is Zionist. There's a decent amount of Freemasonry here too, which goes hand in hand with Zionism. Yeah. And yeah, there was by the time October 7th happened, I was already quite aware of how deceitful the Israeli military is, and the controversy around the Likud party and Netanyahu's sort of far right wing ideology, and it was really like a stand down order of some kind. He's being investigated for it now, and he's clinging in there and just managing to stay. He's dodging like court dates by having emergencies and bombing runs and stuff. He's like, it's such a shameful way to cling to power. I believe in Tel Aviv there was, I looked this up a couple of weeks ago to remind myself, but I believe there were 40 plus weeks straight, every week in Tel Aviv, there are these mass demonstrations against Netanyahu where they would complain about his corruption charges, and then once October 7th happened, then they would criticize him for that too. And why are the hostages not being freed? And why didn't they do more? Why didn't they look into the warnings that these officers gave? And so that has really turned it around. I remember you guys have been on the Hervoy Marich's Geopolitics and Empire podcast a little while ago, right? I didn't watch the whole thing. I saw some of it. It was very interesting. And so I've been on his podcast several times, and just recently we were talking about Israel in prophecy. We did a whole episode on that. But years ago, I was on his TNT radio show. He had this radio show that he would do every day. And I was a guest on there almost every week. And we would just catch up on things. And so we were talking about this October 7th as it was happening, week after week. And I remember telling him, I don't think this is another 9/11 like event where everyone's brains turn off and they don't question anything, and they're just sort of patriotic and going along with the narrative. Because I remember that very clearly with 9/11. It was like suddenly you couldn't question anything about the government. You had to be maximum patriotic all the time. It really didn't feel like that this time. It felt like something fumbled, and it just looked embarrassing. It looked bad. And young people especially, you could see it on TikTok, where nobody was sympathizing with Israel. They're like, you should have prevented this. It actually just looks bad for Netanyahu. And then all these questions come up, and the journalists start getting killed. And then, the humanitarian stuff gets blocked, and just one thing after another just compounds and gets worse and worse and worse. And by now it seems to be full blown, like I'm seeing a huge surge in genuine anti-Semitism and genuine hatred of Jews. It goes way beyond just political analysis, because there is this, unfortunately, this this sort of zeitgeist effect where even when you have a completely valid criticism and you can break down all this stuff historically, the average person doesn't want to have to dig into the research and separate one thing from another. And so I think it's a very weird time that we're living in, because the taboo of criticizing Israel is suddenly gone. And then, of course, there's all these existing laws around and policies around anti-Semitism and what you can say and what you can't say, and there's censorship. And so I think it's important for people who actually do proper research, journalists and authors and stuff, to be able to discuss these very valid and underreported things while still being able to caution people against, lumping every Jew into just saying they are all evil, or just saying that they are some. I mean, I see people saying that, when Jesus says that they're a generation of vipers and that they're, something like they're the children of Satan or something, they're like, that's literally the genetic legacy of reptile demons, that all Jews are monsters or something like that. And it's crazy because obviously, Paul himself was a Pharisee. He
Right.
was chosen by Jesus. It's
a good point to that, Terry. If I may kind of interrupt on that, there's
Yeah.
a couple of things that people fail to see on this. He did define them as a generation of vipers, no doubt about it. But when he spoke to Nicodemus, who was also a Pharisee that came to him secretly by night, this is where he gets into the new birth for the first time, effectively showing you that the only way to undo, so to speak, that curse is to be born again, just like every other Christian would have to do.
Sure.
And two, in Acts 15, when they're having a debate over, the law and the Gentiles that were coming in, it was the ones that were pushing the law at the time were an entire group of Pharisees that had believed Jesus Christ. So there still were Pharisees that truly had believed. And I do believe that when he talks to Nicodemus and he says, the wind blows where it will and you don't know where it come from or where it's going to, that was just like the miraculous moment at the day of Pentecost when the Spirit came down and it came in like a rushing mighty wind. He was already prophesying of what's going to happen. And then again, like you said, there are clearly there's too much. Everybody wants to lump all the Jews into the same basket and say everybody's evil because you're Jewish. And that's kind of terrible to do. We've got our very, very good friend. I'm sure you do as well, especially in Canada. There's so many Jewish people up in Canada as well. But you've got Elizabeth Glass, and here she is, a secular Jew, but trying her best to wake up people to the Noahide laws from her end of the world. And yet she was very upset when people dare to say that Jews are trying to bring out Noahide laws. It is the extreme right-wing group, the Chabad, that is doing it. But even in that group, there's a lot of good people there that have no clue to what's really going on.
Right. It's kind of like the Vatican and the Catholic Church. I mean, you talk to an average Catholic, they have no clue how bad things are at a high level, the abuse that happens in secret places and the geopolitics and, even during the times of the Inquisition and the Crusades and things that might have been like completely in excess. Like, it would be wild to suggest that all Catholics are the equivalent of like what the Pope is doing with the Medici family and the indulgences that they were selling or something like. They're some of the strongest voices for reform are from within their own people. And I see rabbis all the time condemning Zionism because and I was doing some research on this the other day. I could even look it up, but that in the early 1930s and before Israel was even founded, and this was just being discussed as a thing that they were going to do, there were this groups of rabbis who were coming out and saying this is a complete violation of rabbinic law. There's even in the Talmud, there's warnings to not have a mass migration of Jews to Jerusalem, into the Holy Land, that it's going to attract all this negative attention. There's going to be sectarianism and war and all this stuff. So, yeah, that's sort of the strange state of affairs. But I do want to get into the Noahide laws themselves and where you think it is, because I remember hearing about it. I'm going to guess probably around 2007 or sometime between 2007 and 2010, somewhere around there. I started hearing about Noahide laws and the idea that, especially the idea that Christians would be beheaded for believing, in Jesus, that this is idolatry according to them, and that the punishment was decapitation. And it seemed to me like, I've told people, it seems to me like something that is simultaneously completely ridiculous and yet almost feels inevitable. That it's like, it's very far-fetched to think that would happen. And yet it seems like under the right circumstances, and that's kind of what I do in my Substack, is that people tend to think that everything is going to just continue as it is, and there can never be a major shift where suddenly everything changes. And I do a lot of studying of sort of the psychology of crisis and emergencies and trauma, and how in a war situation, or if there's a major collapse or there's some false flag event, suddenly everything can change. So where do you think, like, is the Noahide laws and the idea of Christians being persecuted from this something you think is like a 20% chance that it would ever really happen, but it's still so important that we have to study it? Or is this like, this is going to happen, it is on track to happen, and the only question is, can we stop it? Like, does it feel like it's inevitable?
Well, listen, I would like to, because you raised so many questions. So let me just I was writing my notes.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Talking because I forget. So first of all, I want to say about anti-Semitism that some of it is not really anti-Semitism. It's just people waking up to realities that they were not aware of. I would say a lot of people are now coming to conclusion that dispensational theology is really not biblical Christianity, and they're exploring things that they would not dare explore before. Like, there is more talk about what is actually inside of the Talmud. What is
I see a lot of that.
What does it mean to be Jewish? So when these type of things come out to public, then there is a public reaction, and there always was public reaction to Talmud. Let's not forget how many countries have expelled the Jews in history. And I know that they feel very bad, for it. And some countries, they apologize for it. But it was all due to the fact that what came out was what's in the Talmud. What are they teaching in synagogues? And when that comes out, the natural reaction of nations is negative, very negative, because things in the Talmud are just not nice when it comes to Christ, when it comes what they teach on his mother, what they're teaching about Christians, where they're putting Christianity as Amalek and Edom. And in their messianic vision, Amalek and Edom has to be completely eradicated and destroyed before their Messiah will come. So that's a threat, obviously. We are supporting Jews, and they're saying we have to die.
Yeah, it's one of the craziest. And you guys did an amazing, or I don't know where you found it from, but you guys posted an amazing video of, I'm not going to remember the guy's name, but he was warning about if Jews got power and then they started to realize their actual plans, that basically the only reason they're holding back from killing a bunch of Christians is because they are afraid of retaliation right now, but that there would be a point where they would be comfortable enough that whoever is, I suppose that a secular Jew who doesn't believe those things wouldn't have any reason to go along with that.
Mhm.
Although you could argue that they might get sucked into it through some
Right.
sort of fervor that would happen if, maybe they're secular only in the sense that, like, in the same way that if miracles started happening, a bunch of people who consider themselves atheists would be like, oh, I guess I'll believe in Christianity now or something. Like,
Mhm.
you
Right.
could see how that would become a vortex of, oh, they're starting to do it. Well, now I'm going to go back to my rabbinic roots where these were the promises we were told or something.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. So what is happening? People are awakening to some things like US's liberty, right?
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
these guys are coming out there. They never stopped saying what has happened, and they're learning about things that they have never heard before. They were kind of hiding these type of things.
Sure.
And also when they learn what Judaism really is, what does it mean to be a Jew? When you speak of the Jew, you are not talking about ancient Israelites, and you're not talking about the Old Testament. And when Christians learn that it involves Talmud, Zohar, and Kabbalah, where Christians are portrayed very negatively as a group that cannot even exist or coexist with Judaism in the future. I mean, that does not come from Christian side. As far as I understand, Christians only supported and loved the Jews. You can see evangelical Christianity. They support and love Israel. They support and love the Jews, But the Judaic side is the one that hates the Christianity.
Well, if you
Okay.
look historically, I would say if you look at the Catholic Church's treatment of Jews in various countries, you definitely have them being a separate class of citizens with different rights, not necessarily persecuted, but that's where the ghettos come from, and this idea
Right.
of them not being able to get the same kinds of jobs as most Catholics would in medieval Europe and things like that. And that's how they become involved in money lending and being merchants and stuff instead of,
Mhm.
regular workers. Um, and then I think in Poland, especially, there was a lot of discrimination against them, wasn't there? So there's
Yes,
like, and then a
that's
bunch of these
true.
places where they got expelled, the king had borrowed a bunch of money from the bankers who were Jewish, and then they didn't want to pay their debts. So instead, they just expelled them and didn't pay their debts back. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's all from the Judaic side, but um, there was an easy justification for it because of the fact that these texts were so anti-Christian that no one would complain if they got kicked out because they were also doing unethical things with the amount of interest they were charging and things like that. Do you think it was on both sides, or is it mostly
Well,
that?
no, it is definitely on both sides. I'm not saying or excusing some of the treatment of Jews by Christianity. And I'm not a Catholic, and I have a lot of
Mm,
issues with medieval Catholicism, especially.
right.
They were burning witches.
I
I mean,
kind of think I don't want to interrupt you too much, but I kind of feel like a lot of the Jewish, because I've tried to see it from their point of view. I think a lot of their resentment against Christianity comes from the Catholic Church, which is, like, I believe is, it might not be Amalek. I don't know what that all entails. You guys could explain that because you've looked into it more than I have. But it is a oppressor state. It was oppressive to the Christians that were living under them. They were oppressive to Muslims and everyone else, and they were sort of this empire.
mhm,
And so they associate Christianity with this huge world empire that is oppressive,
mhm,
and um, you know, unfortunately, that trickles down into all these. I mean, at a fundamental theological level, obviously they reject Jesus and they believe he was a blasphemer, and they rejected him right from the start. The Pharisees had him killed, so it's it's the same group of people extending throughout history and conditioning Jews to hate Christians and Christianity. But I find it interesting that because the Catholic Church sort of monopolizes the image of Christianity, it's kind of like Muslims and atheists and a lot of people who reject Christianity. Their first go-to criticism of Christianity will be to point to something that the Catholic Church did, and they don't even care that, there are evangelicals who are completely peaceful and have no history of that kind of thing and reject it, the bad things that have been done in the name of Christ before.
Yeah, and I agree with you that Catholicism kind of took over and monopolized, like you say, the word Christianity. I mean, and it even happened as World Council of Churches brought all the Protestant denomination on the Catholic Church in 2017. And officially the protest is over now, even though individual Protestants don't know about it because they didn't research it on a paper. In official records, protest does not exist anymore. So when you speak about Christianity, you are speaking where Catholic Church has the say over all Christians who are in I would say in a churchianity or some sort of a denominational Christianity. Yeah. This is why we don't even attend church or any denomination with Steve, But you're absolutely correct that the behavior of a Catholic Church, they don't have a very good history. But what it was a church and state together. Yeah. It's an ideology. And when that happens, there are dangers, okay? It crosses the red lines. This is why in United States, we have Constitution, and we have especially where it's supposed to be a secular government, and it's not supposed to put any ideology inside of a government, because any ideology, be it Judaic or Christian, is dangerous when it's married to a state. So, but okay, so... But what I want to say, at the same time, Talmud is very anti-Christian, and it's an archenemy of Jesus Christ.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so when Christians discover that, and they see what they're teaching, what Judaism teaches, this is when they start to protest against it. And that's not necessarily anti-Semitism, because today's definition of anti-Semitism comes from the state of Israel in the first place. So just basic defense of your faith or basic defense of the gospel can be called anti-Semitism today. Or when you criticize Israeli government or actions of Israeli government. Okay, so they will call this anti-Semitism, and I don't think this is fair at all.
No, it's not.
And I really believe that Judaism and Christianity, biblical Christianity, they cannot they can coexist by agreement, that they will agree to disagree and live under secular government, but they cannot coexist any other way. They are completely two different ideologies that go against each other. Now, in Judaism, first thing you have to understand that they are looking at humanity, they're separating humanity to Jews and everybody else.
Right, yep.
That's what Judaism is about.
It's a supremacist ideology, at its core.
And that's why people will have problem with this. I mean, how do you feel when Judaic person will tell you that you are not of the same essence as they are, that your soul has originated in a different sphere, it's satanic sphere, and no matter how godly you are, no matter how redeemed you call yourself, no matter what, you can never attain to a level of a Jewish soul. Never, ever, ever, ever. That you're permanently put below the Jews, okay, and you can never attain to their level no matter what. Well, I have a problem with that, and I think that this type of ideology is anti-humanity. It's a supremacist, racist ideology, and this is where the core problem is with Judaism. This is why Judeo-Christianity is an oxymoron statement.
Yes, for sure it is.
In Christianity, everybody is equal, and you can attain redemption and equality no matter if you're of male, female, Jew or Gentile, slave or free, right? We have Galatians 3:28. That's the tenet of Christianity. There is neither Jew nor Greek, no male or female, neither slave nor free, because we are all one in Christ Jesus. And that is very foreign to Judaism.
But at the same time, even in Christianity, there also comes a little bit of a hierarchy attitude in certain circles. And I think the same applies in Judaism as well. The Chabad organization is more known to really elevate this ideology, and a lot of your ultra Orthodox communities as well, that the Jewish soul is that supreme soul and that all others are just animals. This is the reason why they have no problem. When I say they, I don't like to lump all Jewish people in the same boat. I don't think that's even fair to do so. But what happens is this right-wing radical Jewish ideology lumps anyone that's not Jewish in that boat as being an animal. And that's why they're willing to kill and murder all these people in Gaza.
Yeah.
They consider them as a lesser being.
And they'll say that the children, there's specific, I think, isn't there specific passages in the Talmud about how a child who is likely to become a threat is no different than a full-grown adult threat?
Yes, they soon just kill them as well. And going to the anti-Semitism, though, I pulled up real quick. Viktor Ostrovsky, who is a former Mossad agent, one of his books that he wrote, he really went into how that was used in Mossad to label people intentionally to make them look really, really bad. And then there was also a former MK member of the government that also said it. And another thing that's interesting that just recently came out, Yaakov Sharit. He is the son of former Prime Minister and President of Israel, second Prime Minister of Israel, Moshe Sharit. He came out about 7 years ago, and called Israel a criminal state. He really began to reflect at 92 years old, and he's still living. He's 99 years old now, but he began to really reflect. And he talked about the horrors of what they did in 1948. And even his wife, Rena, when she was listening to him, she's like, oh my gosh, I never heard my husband talk like this. And this man's very brilliant. He's not some person struggling to talk and stuff at 92. He's a very brilliant man. And he reflected on, yes, amazing. Middle East Eye is actually the one that carried the first one, but he's been in multiple interviews since then. And I was surprised to see that. And but many of the things that we already know, how the state of Israel came into being, but he talks about in the Negev where he was made a commander. His family came there in the late 1800s, so he knew a lot of these Arabs very closely, very good friends of his. But when they had to drive them out, he said it was horrible. He said he literally wept, especially over one Bedouin friend. And I know what Bedouins are like. I had friends that were Bedouins. They're beautiful people. And but he said it haunted him the rest of his life. 240,000 Arabs that were in the Negev. So no, it was definitely populated, but he said we had to drive them all out.
Right, because and I'm remembering what I was told when I was younger, which is what Zionists are always teaching, which is that it was a completely desolate area.
Yes,
it was a people without a land and a land without a people and all this kind of stuff. And they have all these slick talking points to try to convince Christians that no harm was done and that this is just the miracle of God that has brought about the state of Israel. They don't even know about British, Palestine mandate and how that came to be. That I mean that's maybe a whole separate topic, but the origin of United Nations and granting them this land, and all the shenanigans that went into that. Obviously, the Rothschilds were involved with that. But it is kind of amazing how, I think the internet has sort of popped that bubble at this point. And I don't know how fast your Substack is growing, but I imagine you're getting quite a bit of growth just by talking about this, because right now I feel like the spotlight is on them. People are looking into all of this, and it's sort of like a flood all at once. People are looking at how did modern state of Israel come to be? What is like the Nakba and the displacement of all the people who were there, the I see a lot of stuff about the Holocaust and questioning that, and the different numbers and changing statistics that people have seen, and the Talmud, like it's like everything at once. And for most of my life, if you tried to bring up any one of those points, you would get shut down and you wouldn't be able to talk about it. But now it seems to be wide open.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of interesting, the sale of TikTok to Larry Ellison, who's this like #1 Zionist billionaire in America, who's like completely tied in with Donald Trump and this technocratic state that they're creating. That they're Netanyahu was on at some sort of around a table at a conference talking about how TikTok was like the #1 threat to Israel,
Mhm.
because all the young people use it and they're getting so much information about what's happening in Gaza. And you can see how, information and awareness around this stuff makes them panic. And they're like, we'll just buy it, whatever it is. We'll just spend the money to buy it. And of course, America's the one giving them the money
Yes.
to be able to afford things in the first place, which is the
Yeah.
extra irony.
Mhm. Well, yeah, you brought so many points that I'm writing. There's so much to talk about, and we would have to sit here for enormous hours or have several parts to this show to even get to everything we want to
Yeah.
say. But okay, so let me go back to some points that you were talking about,
sure,
guys.
sure.
And I first of all, there are Jews that are against Zionism. In the state of New York, they're called Neturei Karta. You can look them up. They're pretty big group of people. Some of them live in Israel, and they're all over the world. A lot of them are in the United States of America. They're every time protesting when Netanyahu comes to USA, and nobody covers that. Nobody covers those protests at all.
Right.
So, yes, they teach that Talmud is against Zionist state or creating a state before Messiah comes. One thing. So it's important for people to understand that there is a freedom of religion. So I would have absolutely no problem with Jews having synagogues and living and teaching whatever they want. But the only problem I have when the red line is crossed, meaning that when some sort of ideology is trying to marry the state and government, and that way it's going to be a danger for everybody else who is not into Judaism. So this is when that's the red, kind of red light for me.
Right.
And that's where Chabad comes in, because this is a Hasidic group, which I call Head of the Snake. And they managed to enter almost every government of the world by some sneaky, deceptive methods. And they managed to this is basically organization that connects even Trump with Putin. They're connected through Chabad organization.
I was hoping you were going to bring that up, because I've only kind of recently realized how Chabad originated in Russia.
Yes.
And they came to New York, and then in New York, they still have all these Russian connections.
Yes.
And I almost feel like, and I've tried to bring this up, but most people don't understand what I'm talking about, but maybe you guys would agree that a lot of times when the left was criticizing and saying that Trump is a Russian asset and that they kept going on about Russia, 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 it was almost like what they were trying to say is that he's Chabad controlled, but they couldn't say it. So they had to just say Russian. But it's almost like, because there's that Russian connection, they misdirect it to Russia, but really it's the Chabad connection.
That's exactly right. It's the oligarchs of Russia, and then also the Chabadniks or Chabad organization members, and they are very well funded, multimillionaires, and they're funding all kinds of illegal activities. It's a Russian mafia. And yes, that's what connects Trump to Russia, basically. And I think that they have helped him with his bankruptcies too.
Well,
Right.
the other thing about Russia is that when Putin was elected, he was elected on one of the strong points that he made was he was going to get rid of the oligarchs in Russia, and that was the liberal Jews. And if you watch what's happening in America, it's the exact same thing. Trump's doing the same thing that Putin did. He did get rid of the liberal Jews. He got rid of all these wealthy Jewish liberals that were running the nation and running the government. But instead, he installed the Chabad organization in its place, the ultra-Orthodox. And Trump has done the exact same thing. He's gone after the liberal left side there, getting rid of them, taking them out of power, but he put a Chabad in power instead, and that's what connects, like you said, that's what connects them to Russia.
Yeah, and that's what connects them to China as well. They are Chabad that runs China. They're they are in every government of the world, and it's all very deceptive. But they're building Jewish kingdom, and they're overtaking Jews as well. Like, for example, in Eastern Europe, Hungary, Prague, they got rid of all of these. They even threw out of synagogues Orthodox Jews that were anti-Zionist, and they're all taken over by Chabad Jews that are replaced by Chabad Jews. And that was major news in Hungary, for example. So Chabad is overtaking the identity of Jewishness itself.
That's a good way of putting it. Yep. That's interesting. I remember, yeah, I mean, there's so many things to go off of that. I was just thinking, I remember seeing an old video from, I think, the 90s that was talking about the Taliban, and that there was a Jewish connection there, that they had been supported by Israel. And of course, there's all the false flag events and the CIA connection with the Mossad. But the idea that, and then stuff like Jordan and Saudi Arabia and these different places, that, because this, I mean, I think you would probably agree that this is all leading theoretically to the creation of the third temple on the Temple Mount, and the idea that that's their end goal is to have the temple so that their Messiah can come.
Yes.
And that Jordan, I think it's Jordan, is it Qatar involved, or is it, I forget what the nations, but there's a couple of Arab nations that have the custody of the Temple Mount.
Jordan.
But they have been paid off behind the scenes, and that they're actually not opposing the creation of the third temple. They're just sort of waiting for the right time, it feels like.
That's
right. I did a video recently on YouTube, and it ended up hitting over 100,000 views very, very quickly. And it's over this very issue, because in Daniel 7, which is written in Aramaic and not in Hebrew, the one that's going to overcome or change the time, and they say law, but it's actually a Persian word. It means decree, not a law. That he would think that he can change these two. A lot of people have always thought this was the Vatican. It has nothing to do with the Vatican. And a year and a half ago, I spoke about this, and I said, someone's going to come along. And I didn't think about an entity at the time, but someone's going to come along and try to change the decree Cyrus put out and declare that Cyrus's decree needs to apply to today. Well, the Sanhedrin came out earlier this month, and they made that declaration that the Iranian people need to overthrow the government, and they need to become Noahides, follow the Noahide laws, and they need to carry out the decree of Cyrus in helping to rebuild the third temple on the Temple Mount.
Ah, I see.
That's the prophecy of Daniel 7:25. And the wearing down the saints was the Scofield-Darby doctrines that really just kind of eroded away Christianity into believing the lie to support a modern state of Israel, whereas those prophecies were fulfilled to Israel. And I go through every single one of them, and slowly but surely I've been writing about them. I think about 17 of them so far, to break those down and to help people to understand what they really mean.
I don't know. I just want to talk about like some of the points I made.
Yes, please keep going.
It's just that you guys mentioned it, so I made points, so I definitely referred to it. When you were talking about Nakba, and American people were not even familiar with the word Nakba at all. So it was a brand new thing. What is Nakba, right? Because just you said, they said that 1948 was just like a desert, nothing in there. And they're applying prophecies, the desert will bloom and all of this to Jews coming over there and making Greenland out of Israel, and planting vineyards and olive trees and all kinds of stuff. Well, none of that is actually the way that they tell you. And I want to give a name of a Jewish man by name Miko Peled. I don't know if you ever heard about him.
I don't think so.
Okay, his last name is spelled P as a Peter, E-L-E-D, Peled. His first name is Miko. Now, he has a lot of videos online. He's a activist. He's an American Jew activist, anti-Zionist, pro-Palestinian, and he's actually a son of the general, IDF general, and his father was of, and his mother was of the generation who came to Israel in 1948. So he has a video called The General's Son, and you can watch his video. He also wrote a book by name The General's Son, and he's explaining what happened in 1948. People lived there. There were Palestinians living there, and they had even a culture. Okay, there was a culture going on in there,
including a Jewish culture, right? I believe there was some synagogues there. There was a chief priest or chief rabbi of some kind there, because that guy who lived in Jerusalem opposed the Zionist state coming in and said that it should remain an international city that doesn't have a state.
Yes, and they all lived in peace. They lived in peace. There was absolutely no problem. There was no killing each other. What brought all of this problem was the creation of 1948 Zionist state, Jewish state. So they are the cause of all of these troubles in Middle East. So this is very important that people will go and watch General Son, Miko Peled, and listen to him and listen to that video and perhaps read the book. Not many people like to read books anymore. They like to watch videos. So anyway, and you asked about Noahide laws, if that can ever happen. And I know that it sounds like conspiracy theory that kind of thing could never happen because we have laws to protect us from anything like that. And it seems that way. What I would say is in a Bible is this scripture, and I didn't find the exact scripture, but Apostle Paul basically says the scene of this world is changing, meaning that there is always, scene of the world will change, and it's been happening throughout history. It's happening now. I mean, would we ever believe that one day we're going to wake up into a COVID situation and we will be all locked in houses? We had to lock our businesses up while all these Amazon businesses and Costco and all these big corporations could stay open. The little person who is cutting hair for a living, for example, had to lock their business down.
Yeah. They're considered non-essential suddenly. And
exactly.
So,
or we had to stand in circles 6 feet apart from each other. Okay. So would you ever, let's say 10 years ago, if I tell you that one day we're going to wake up and this is going to happen and you will see Americans going along with it?
Right. You'd assume that it would never work, that everyone would resist. Yeah.
We'll say, well, not in America. American people are freedom oriented and it can't happen. And we have laws to protect us. Well, unfortunately, we see what happens. Okay.
Same thing with Australia with their guns. They actually had guns and they were disarmed practically overnight.
You see how scene of the world can change on you. One day you wake up and suddenly it's a different world, isn't it? Well, what you need to pay attention to is what infrastructure is being prepared. What are they doing while we are all distracted with all kinds of false flag events or anything they produce, by false flags? And with Noahide laws, there is now Chabad rabbis promoting them, literally promoting them everywhere as ethics and world peace and justice. Then
what is the term that they use for spreading the education and teaching the nations? They have a specific word, don't they, for that? I remember hearing it's like it's spreading the light of the Noahide laws or something like that. But I remember when I looked into it a long time ago, it was it was, I guess, not nearly as far along, but there was
Mhm.
presidents, U.S. presidents, who were acknowledging the Noahide laws as being,
Mhm.
um,
Foundation of civilized society.
yeah.
Yes.
And if you just looked at like the actual story of Noah after Noah's flood, and God gives some basic commandments there, it doesn't even sound that ridiculous. It actually kind of sounds like, oh, God did give everybody in the world these laws. But of course, they've taken those couple of commandments and then uh, blown it
Mhm.
out into this entire rabbinic Kabbalistic interpretation of everything. And that's what makes it, uh, even me, I was like, well, what's wrong with the Noahide laws? You just look at what it says. It's actually kind of nice. Don't kill
Mhm.
people and don't drink blood. And, and
Right.
of course they've taken it. I don't know how far it is now. You could tell me how far it is at this point, how
It's
intricate
very
these things.
far. It's in fact very far. First of all, we have it in public law in United States. It's in Education Day USA. Every single president, whether Democratic or Republican, is proclaiming on Schneerson's birthday. Imagine that.
Wow, right.
Schneerson's birthday, every single year, they're proclaiming Education Day USA. So that way you have to read a little, script in there. What is the Education Day about? It's not about math and English and science, and it's not about children's education. It's about morality. It's about ethics,
Mm.
universal ethics, what's ethical and ethical education of our children. And when you read what is it about, it's about Schneerson and his 7 Noahide laws, and they're proclaiming that this is the foundation of our civilization and foundation of United States itself.
Did
So
Schneerson really innovate that interpretation of the Noahide laws, or does that go back to Maimonides or
it
somebody
does
much
go to
older?
Maimonides. It's actually in Talmud. It's in Talmud in the book of Sanhedrin 56,
A and B both.
57. And yes, A and B, it deals with it. And then Maimonides, the 12th century or 13th century scholar, that's a very important figure in Judaism, respected rabbi who codified entire Judaic law for them.
Right.
So it's part of Law of Kings, important codification of Halakha or Judaic law. And in chapters 8 through 10, it deals with Gentiles, how
Okay.
Jews are to deal with Gentiles, and what are the laws for Gentile world. And that's the Noahide code. So it is a fully codified law in Judaism. So when you talk about Judaism, you cannot exclude this. This is part of what Judaic law is about.
And
It's
and from what you guys can tell, because I see the things about a president signing this thing, and the skeptic in me just says, this is a president who's got 100 things going on in his day. He doesn't care who these people are. They walk in, they say,
Mhm.
we're part of this group, and he signs a piece of paper, and he doesn't even care what's in
Mhm.
it. It doesn't mean anything. It'll never, it'll never be enforced. And then all of these, because of APAC and the donations people get, the senators and congressmen even would just say, oh, Schneerson, yeah, he was a great guy. But they're just, it's hard to believe they would read this document and even understand it in the first place, because they're so lazy, and they don't
Mhm.
particularly
No, you're
investigate
right.
the thing. They don't investigate bills. There's lobbyists just come up and they just do what the lobbyists want.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're
But
right.
you
Because
also
they
do see them then flying to Israel and going to the Wailing Wall and things, and it's like, okay, at that point, it's starting to feel more like a cult of people who actually do understand what's going on, and they're maybe even excited about it. So I
Mhm.
don't know which way to go on it. I could see the argument that these are lazy, corrupt politicians who just uh, sort of acknowledge whatever this Chabad group wants them to, and maybe they get a short version, or maybe they're being lied to about what it even is.
Mhm.
And then they say, yeah, we celebrate the Noahide laws, and we think this is the foundation of America. But do you think that they actually go through and at any point understand what it really says?
No, actually, I think that Trump does for
Mm.
sure.
He
And
should
I
know.
think that Bush knew for sure, but
Mm.
because he actually put it inside of a law, Before it wasn't a law, but it started with Carter as a proclamation every year. That means that the president would just make a formal proclamation acknowledging Schneerson and his role in education and spreading morality and ethics. But after it's in 1991, I believe, and Bush put it inside of a law, and it became public law 10214 and part of Education the USA. And since then, every single year it's been re-signed, and now we have a president. I believe, like you say, at first it was just through deception. I don't believe Carter really understood what he's doing. I think he had a lot of pressure. So did Reagan too. It's just a lot of pressure. There was a specific rabbi by name Shem Tov, and he's still there, and so is his son now, continuing this legacy. Shem Tov was the one who was dealing with Carter's and Reagan's administrations, and he would constantly bug the secretaries of the president, constantly. And kind of by a constant kind of deception and pressure, he kind of was successful for having president to proclaim this. But I don't think they knowingly knew what they're doing or where it's going to lead. I really believe that it's the devil who is working through Chabad organization and worked through Rebbe Schneerson, who was a mystical Kabbalist.
Yes, for sure.
Basically like a magician, okay? He dealt with Kabbalah, which is like black magic. And they kind of gained power and excellent finances through illegal operations like a mafia. They are dealing with organ trafficking, sex trafficking, children trafficking. I mean, this is not even a religious organization. It has a cover of a religious organization, but it's not. It's a mafia. It's a criminal mafia who runs the world. And now they have power in the government, and they finance these politicians. And then couple that with dispensational theology. It started somewhere in 1800s. Well, Chabad was created like in 1700s or so, and it stayed in the same family. It's one family of father, son, or a son-in-law.
I didn't know that.
Yes, because Schneerson was a seventh in a generation. He's lost. He never named anybody after him. So they actually have him as the Messiah.
Yes, I have heard that as well. Yeah.
Right.
That they're almost expecting him to come back to life.
Yes, they expect him to come back or even exist. I mean, they write him letters, and they have all kinds of testimonies that he's answering them. They have in yeshivas a chair for him, and he supposedly sits there, and children in the yeshivas greet him every morning.
Yeah, and that's how you can tell it's truly mystical. It's not they're not operating on normal theology, even within the Talmud, because the Talmud would never predict that this is the case, and so they're beyond even Talmud in the Kabbalah. Then they have, I mean, I don't know. I've never read as much as I could on the Kabbalah. I'm sure that's a whole rabbit hole that you could go down forever. But certainly his way of interpreting things, he also, Schneerson got visited by a bunch of Israeli leaders early on, and the news articles and stuff will deny that he had a political influence, but they were asking him specific questions about different policies and international controversies, and he was making decisions like that. And I saw a documentary just probably about 2 months ago from, I think, the 80s about Schneerson and Chabad, and it was very eye-opening to me because it showed that New York Chabad money was taking over Israeli politics.
Yes.
And I always would have assumed it was the other way around, that Israel was leading and Chabad was following and doing stuff on the American side because, they were sort of such big fans of what was happening in Israel. But it was more these New York Chabad rabbis and their organization that was funneling money there and buying seats in their Knesset and um, and taking over their politics. And so it almost made me feel sorry for the Israelis who were so broke and such a poor country with like nothing, because I mean, aside from all this aid they get from other countries like US, that they were vulnerable to this takeover by this mafia-like organization. And it really flipped my view of it, because I kind of assumed that these warlike generals and the whole um, I forget what the name is of the Jabotinsky, these
Yes.
founding figures of Israel who were terrorists, who were blowing up things and blowing up British, embassies and things like that, and trying to separate from Britain and gain their independence. There's this really strong terrorist side, and I'm like, these are the real hardcore Zionist guys who are really doing it, making deals with Czechoslovakia for all the arms trade. There's a book people should check out called Dangerous Liaison. It was written by a couple, a man and wife, who were intelligence agents, and they go in and explain the history of the early relationship of Israel and America, and how most of the people who were founding Israel were actually aligned with the Soviet Union. They were socialists, they were atheists, they didn't even believe in religion,
No.
and they just wanted to have this. They were willing to use terrorism, and the U.S. intelligence agencies and military were warning that this was a terrible idea to give them so much money and ally with them. And so it's been a very rocky and strange relationship. And then Chabad coming in sort of filled in the gaps for me. It's like, oh, this is the brain of the operation that has all these international connections. They have this extremely strong religious point of view that melds together all these Jews who have all these different backgrounds and different preferences, and they seem to have been able to take over their policy. And I would wonder if somebody like Schneerson had told somebody like Netanyahu what to do on any given day. Like, is it actually a command structure? Like, it's almost that straightforward?
Oh yeah, Schneerson was a person that they would go ask what to do and ask for blessings. I mean, I'm sure you saw a video of Netanyahu and Schneerson, and that was just one video that we can see. How many were conversations we don't know, right?
Yeah.
Because he was connected directly with Schneerson, and he was chosen to be the prime minister who will hand the keys to the Messiah. So that's why he's back. That's why it's so they want to speed it up. They're singing, we want Moshiach now. They overtook entire Jewish identity. They're overtaking. When you speak of a Jew, you speak of a Chabad now, because they overtook the entire identity of the Jewish people, and they are the ones who are defining what anti-Semitism is. So anybody Jewish, even in American government, is a Chabadnik. It belongs to that organization. And when it comes to Gentiles, they are creating a future world order where they want Jews as a supreme race to rule over Gentiles who are subordinate, and they're creating the two-tier system with Noahide laws for the Gentiles. And now there is a Noahide Academy in Jerusalem. They're training Noahide judges, Noahide teachers. There is Noahide Alliance. And I will be writing soon about, they ally themselves with German Noahides who are claiming that they are Ephraim. And they're officially getting in cooperation with the Sanhedrin. They're preparing the Sanhedrin. This is all the infrastructure that's being prepared. They're preparing Sanhedrin for takeover as soon as a temple is built.
Right.
Yeah. They're also planning of crushing the United Nations, completely getting rid of it and transferring it to the hands of Sanhedrin. International court will be ruled out of Jerusalem, and Sanhedrin will be the ruling body.
I mean, you can see the moves starting to be made on Trump's side of trying to get out of the UN and
Yes.
basically discredit the UN, discredit NATO,
Hmm.
get rid of all these traditional organizations. And meanwhile, he's creating new laws about anti-Semitism and
Right.
redefining what that means.
Yes.
So I guess I'm assuming you guys don't have much more time. We didn't really agree on how long this would go. I could talk for a long time with you about this, but
Well, we
um,
can have other shows there if you want. Like, we can kind of focus on one thing and make a show out of it or
sure,
whatever.
I would
So,
really like that. I guess the last question I have then is: do you think that there is a rather tightly scripted plan for how to get the third temple, or do you think there are so many real forces still at play, like Iran, for example, and these things that they're always trying to destabilize, that it is just unpredictable enough that they don't have a real plan in place yet, but they're just creating that infrastructure, like you said. Or do you think it's? I sometimes get the sense, especially with Netanyahu, when I saw a documentary. There was a documentary about his corruption case and the investigation going into him, and you see that his wife and his son are nagging him on and you know
mhm.
pushing him to do more radical things, and Netanyahu himself isn't as radical as his son and his wife, who are pushing him to do things. It almost feels like it's just being made up on the fly, and it's just chaos in on the Israeli side. So um, and that would also make a little bit more sense if Chabad is kind of the one that is coordinating the main things, and Netanyahu is kind of just the figurehead who has to do his part on the Israeli side. So, do you guys have a theory or a sense that this is like a timeline when it will be done, or do you think they're making it up as they're going along?
Well, at this point, it's a conjecture, right? Because I am waiting to see if this is a prophecy or not. Because the thing is, um, they have been the Pharisaic system was judged in 70 AD, and Jesus is the king now. So
Mm.
Jews have tried to bring the Messiah for many, many, many times in history. Just go on Google and put in history how many times they try to recreate their system. I mean, you will find Sabbatean Frankists. I mean,
Mhm.
they tried and tried, and they even managed to get the kings of the earth or governments to support them, and then it kind of fell apart because it got fully exposed and just kind of they couldn't pull it off. Well, it seems now they're pulling it off. That's why I'm writing about Noahide laws, that we have to not only expose them, we have to radically expose them and say no, and completely defend the gospel and say we're going to go along with it
Mhm.
and see if we can dismantle this. Because if we allow it, you see, they knew that if they infiltrate Christianity through dispensationalism, they can be successful, because Christians who are supposed to guard the gospel and freedom in Christ, we don't have those Christians anymore. 98% are dispensationalists, and they are giving power to the beast, so to speak,
Hmm.
right? So I'm waiting to see if this is they're gonna pull it off. In that sense, it was in the prophecy. It must be. I mean, and if or maybe it's gonna all fall apart. And but by any means, even if they pull this off, let's say in 5, they want to do it like very soon, because they know that if they don't do it soon, they will never pull it off.
That's kind of how I feel too, is that there's a desperation that is happening right now that I've never
Yeah.
seen before as well, especially now that TikTok and young people and social
Yeah.
media is amplifying it so much, that it's overriding even their algorithms and censorship schemes. People are finding ways of talking about it without directly talking about it,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of cool among young people uh, to talk about Israel and Zionism as a threat. And so
Mhm.
I mean, I can't imagine from their point of view, they've worked so long, so carefully in the shadows to make things happen. And now suddenly it's like a big spotlight all at once on them.
Yeah.
I have to imagine in that desperate situation that you're going to start seeing. I've talked with people like Hervoy March before and others that I think they've got the back end. access to a lot of electronic devices, a lot of computers, and military technology. And Netanyahu has bragged a lot about having cyber power that is unmatched in the world, the ability to do cyber attacks. That I would imagine something like a massive cyber attack, false flag, blame it on something like Iran, and then, cripple some sort of critical infrastructure or something like that. And then in the chaos of that, blame it on Israel's enemies. And then we know Palantir and these other major surveillance devices that Trump is putting in specifically,
Yes.
that, they're creating lists, they're creating targets. Man, there's so much I want to talk to you about. There's one last thing I'll just mention, because maybe you've never heard of it, or maybe it's not even credible. But somebody recently, I was mentioning that I was going to talk to you guys, and they said I should ask about something called Project Pogo and Project Zephyr,
Yeah,
as being
I
this
know about them.
the idea of these projects that have circulated in the White House of creating, encouraging and creating a backlash against Zionism on purpose, and allowing the free speech around it to happen on purpose, just so that they can collect the data on all the people who say it, and then target them through a bunch of things that would look like accidents or diseases or some other way that there'd be. It sounds far-fetched to me, but it also sounds like a theoretical project that somebody would have come up with. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but
Yeah.
do you know if there's any substance to it? I think it was more like a rumor than, it hasn't been really confirmed.
There was about 6 or 7 years ago when this came out, the Pogo, this project. And at the time, we were talking with Adam Green a lot, because he used to be a Christian. He's no Christian anymore. So, So at the time, they were saying he is an agent. Maybe they were saying we are the agents, because there were so few voices at the time. Like 7 years ago, there's not many people who would talk about.
No, there
this
really
is
isn't.
a very recent thing that
Most people who would be neo-pagan or something. Like, there's a lot of like Scandinavian pagan type people who'd be like white supremacists. That's who they were. The only people that were talking about it, and for some reason they wouldn't get banned.
Yes, yeah. So they were.
People.
So that way, but I think that Adam did research into that. He says it's just not true. Like, it's not, this project is not true. And now you see how many people are coming out and actually exposing Talmud and Israel. So I don't think it's true. So people, if Israel pulls this off, there will be enormous amount of dead people, because it's going to be done by force. Like what you say, Palantir and all this technology they have. And this is what the rabbis in Israel, in Noahide Academy, are telling to Noahides. They are saying that 2/3 of the mankind will have to die before their Messiah comes, and only 1/3, and those who are Noahides, can enter the world to come. That's what they're saying. So are they planning major killing of people? Because imagine if Noahide laws come, right? If this kind of society is set up worldwide, and Sanhedrin is ruling as an international court, then United States doesn't exist anymore. Not United Nations doesn't exist. This is not going to go over easy. I mean, enormous amount of people. It's not just Christians that will be persecuted. Atheists, Muslims, or any other religions. Yeah, Muslims, but some Muslims is not even considered. They're not considered idolatry by Judaism.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember you guys were writing about that recently, that because they don't have a Messiah figure themselves, or they didn't worship a man like Jesus, then they're actually they don't fit that definition.
They don't. They would be Noahide. They're actually accepted Noahides already as Muslims.
Ah, okay. That would explain the cooperation that we see then, maybe.
Yes. So on the Judaic law, there's no problem other than their behavior. If they steal or if they do anything, they just have to subject themselves to Jewish power. That's all. So, but Christians are definitely a problem, but for Judaism. But yes. So what I want to say about this pogo and all this, I don't know if it's true. As what I heard, it's not really true. And when you look at the amount of people, how many people are now exposing, especially after the October event and genocide of Palestinians that was completely televised. They are all Palestinians now. I mean, just imagine that such a war criminal is walking free. Okay. And nothing was ever done, and there is no justice for Palestinians. Imagine we live in a world where they can kill you and there is no justice. So I think that if they pull it off, what you think, Steve? Are they going to pull this off or not? Because everybody's asking.
The building of the temple or the Noahide laws?
Everything.
Both?
Yeah, both.
I always say like this. Hezekiah was able to change the mind of God, even though it was prophesied that he was going to die. So it is possible if the Christian community or the world as a whole, doesn't have to necessarily just be Christians, if people would begin to band together and stand together, they could make changes on these issues. But otherwise, when it comes to like the third temple, if they can bomb and obliterate an entire little country, well, it's not really a country, but still like massive cities there.
Yeah, like a province.
Yeah, lay it totally waste to the ground, raise it to the ground, and then nobody in the world does anything about it. They're not worried about what's going to happen. And as far as the temple, I had one guy that I knew that was actually constructing already all the windows and doors for it. They're actively building everything that they have need of to put this together. Now their Sanhedrin is calling on Iran to actually step forward. They want the new people there. They want to overthrow the nation there. They'll eventually manage to pull it off. They destroyed all the other nations in the Middle East. What makes us think that they can't pull that off? And when it comes to the Noahide laws, it would not be very hard for them to pull it off in America because AIPAC owns every single politician that we have, both Democrat or Republican. I don't even the ones that are Palestinian are taking AIPAC money. So, I mean, think about it. We had two people. We had Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene that were not. Two people can't stop these people from doing what they want.
And then it makes you think of the Epstein files, the Mossad involvement, and the idea of how many of them are straight up blackmailed, that even if they wanted to, even if they tried to, they're compromised, and they really, when a push comes to shove, they could be exposed. And it's
Trump the same. People think that, oh, he's such a great guy, he wanted to expose Epstein. And one of the guys that I've worked with and selling equipment for my dad's company there is from Mar-a-Lago, and actually knew two of the girls that were on Epstein Island, and one of them was able to identify Trump as being one of the people there, and said she was paid off to keep her mouth shut. I mean, of course, that's secondhand, but nonetheless, it seems to be more credible. I mean, with all the information coming out. And why does he want to play this all off?
Well, he's certainly not releasing the files. I mean, 1% has been released, maybe, but he's protecting them. And I feel like the pressure that, my theory on that, I've written about it on my Substack, is that the pressure to release the Epstein files is itself an acceleration of all their plans, because when you have blackmail, it is only once there is a credible threat of it being released that the people who are blackmailed feel motivated to do something. The blackmail exists to make people do something they wouldn't otherwise do. And so by saying, we're about to release it, watch out, we're about to do it, all these governors and people in legislation and whoever's all involved, it's like a gun to their head. It's like now they have to start doing it for real. And so these crazy policies and what happened in Venezuela, all these different things, who knows how many things are motivated by this blackmail being right at the cusp of being released. But they're holding it back just enough that any day they could release more. And that's my theory on how they're using it, that it's being teased really strongly because they know that they want these people to cooperate.
I'll tell you something that's really concerning as well. As I got a message the other day from Julian Assange's wife. I'd corresponded with her back when he was still in prison, and back when she was hoping that Trump would get him pardoned the first time. And so not too long ago, I sent her a message. I hadn't talked to her in a while. And then she responded. It took her about a month before she got back around to it, but she responded. My message was, do you think, I said, I'm very happy to see that Julian finally got out. I know he had to plead guilty, things like that. I said, I have a strong suspicion that Israel had more to play in what he was going through than the public really knows. And she wrote me basically a one-line statement on it, admitting that they are definitely heavily behind the things that he went through. So that was surprising to get that from her. And so that just lets me know, because we know Julian had so much information that he knew about through the files that he had discovered and was releasing. So I could only imagine how much he had on Israel and how much he's held back, no doubt, because of fear of never getting out of prison.
And that shows you that the mountain of evidence that is waiting to be released, and the fear that they must have, like we were talking about the desperation. I just get that sense of desperation. That's actually one of the reasons I wanted to reach out and talk to you guys, because I just get the sense that we are in a state of really like never before seen information war, and psyops and misdirection, and trying to keep people. I think a lot of the stuff that's happening with ICE, and there's always going to be a crisis now, just to try to stop meaningful information from coming out. That it's just bombard people with panic, violate laws, whatever it takes. Just and meanwhile, people like yourself are putting out this research that I have been waiting for people to release for a long time. I wasn't going to go look into it myself, but I'm very grateful that your Substack exists and that you guys are doing the work that you're doing. And I want to thank you for coming and talking to me, because, I recommend people follow you and check out your Substack. What is the exact name of it so that people can follow it if they're not familiar with it?
My Substack comes with my maiden name. It's Jana, JANA SUTOOVA. It's kind of difficult, isn't it? It's Jana Sutova at Substack.com, I believe. So, but Stephen's is easier. So what's yours?
It's just my name, Stephen Bennun, Substack. Yeah. So,
right.
But the title of it is Exposing the Noahide.
Exposing Noahide laws and defending the faith.
Right. So I guess if you search that, you'd probably find it as well.
Right.
Yes. And Jana's definitely got the more important work, I do believe, in this here, because this is definitely something that people definitely need to know about.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the prophetic side of it. Your guys' take on it is very interesting to me. The idea of changing the decree, what Cyrus is saying, I'm interested in that whole side of things as well. So it's not just the political side for me; it's the religious and theological side as well that I'm interested in. And so, I guess we'll end it there. I'll say thank you again for coming,
thank you, Terry,
and hopefully we can have another discussion sometime. I would love that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Terry, for having us, and
yes.
Just let us know, and we can have another time to talk.
And send Jana your email so I can send you a subscription so you can read all those super long, hour-long read posts that unfortunately my long-winded self writes.
Yes, I will have to do that. The nice thing about Substack, they have a little play button and it'll read it to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten through very interesting and long articles that I wouldn't have had time to read. As I'm just doing other stuff, I can listen to it. I think it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I'm not writing very long because I know how people's attention is, and I know that I'm just kind of trying to put it in about 2, 3, 4 minute read, and so just go right to the point. Mm-hmm. I just do them a little more often.
Okay, well, I will give you that because I can't wait to see more of your material. Thank you again.
Thank you. You have
Thank
a
you,
great
Terry.
night.